On New Year's Eve, 1975, in Greenwood, Indiana, a horrific fire claimed the lives of the entire Roberson family. 4 children and their parents, Charles and Carol. Initially, it was thought the cause was faulty Christmas light. However, there was one lone survivor, an 18-year-old babysitter named Cindy White. When police found nude photos of Cindy in Charles Roberson's wallet, suspicion fell on her as a jilted lover. In May 1976, Cindy was convicted of 6 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to 6 concurrent life terms. Nearly 40 years later, journalist Candace DeLong visited Cindy, the Indiana Women's Prison, to uncover the truth behind this tragic story. Cindy recounted her traumatic childhood. From the age of 8, she had been sexually abused by her father for years until his death in 1971. When she sought help from her mother, Cindy was only advised to not be alone with your father. No one protected her from this pain. The abuse caused Cindy to develop mental health issues, manifesting as physical symptoms. She was diagnosed with hysterical paralysis and hospitalized for 10 months. When she was released, both of Cindy's parents had passed away. Fortunately, she met Charlie and Carol Roberson. They invited Cindy to live with their family as a babysitter. Initially, Cindy felt life there was like Disneyland because she was loved. However, 35-year-old Charles Roberson began flirting with the 17-year-old girl. Cindy was initially excited. Things quickly turned dangerous. Charles forced Cindy to watch pornography with him, and even coerced her into having sex with animals. Shockingly, Carol, Charles's wife, was aware and participated in these acts. Cindy became an unwilling sex slave. When Cindy tried to escape, Charles locked her in a room and threatened her by killing a kitten. Feeling desperate, Cindy thought about starting a fire to create enough smoke to make the house unlivable. She hoped this would help her escape her current situation. On New Year's Eve 1975, Cindy lit a piece of paper. The flames quickly spiraled out of control. She tried to save the Roberson family but failed. Cindy recounts trying to open a window to escape with the children, but the next thing she remembers is lying on the ground. Prosecutor claimed Cindy jumped out alone. She says she doesn't remember what happened. It's possible that opening the window created a backdraft effect that propelled her out. Cindy says she repeatedly tried to go back into the house to save everyone, but was held back by neighbors. She suffered severe burns on her arms, throat, and part of her face. Initially, Cindy was told that the entire Roberson family had escaped. When she learned the truth that they had all died, she was so shocked she had to be sedated. In the 1976 trial, prosecutors portrayed Cindy as a young woman seeking revenge on her married lover by burning down his house. They used the pornographic photos of Cindy found after the fire and love letters as evidence. Cindy was too ashamed to reveal the abuse she had endured. Instead of being evidence of her abuse, the photos became a motive for murder. Cindy was convicted and sent to prison. It took Cindy 10 years to speak the truth. She shared that she needed to face her past, to heal her wounds, and hoped to help others. Cindy admitted to causing the deaths of the Roberson family, but insisted it was not her original intention. She only wanted to create a small fire as an excuse to leave the house. But things got out of control. Cindy's story is a heartbreaking tragedy. She was abused and betrayed by those who should have protected her from a young age. When she finally tried to end the situation, Cindy inadvertently caused another tragedy. 4 innocent children lost their lives, and in a way, Cindy was the 5th victim. She had lost her trust, mind, and body through years of abuse. Now, after nearly 40 years in prison, Cindy's only hope is clemency. Her story highlights the terrible consequences of child abuse and the importance of speaking up when witnessing any signs of mistreatment. It also raises questions about justice and redemption. Whether a deeply wounded woman like Cindy deserves forgiveness and a chance to rebuild her life after paying such a high price for a tragic mistake in her past. This story serves as a stark reminder of the importance of protecting children and listening to the voices of abuse victims. It also demonstrates the complexity of human nature and the criminal justice system. No one is born a criminal, and sometimes the line between victim and perpetrator is very thin. We need a more humane and comprehensive approach to dealing with complex cases like this. where trauma and tragedy intertwine in unimaginable ways. The case of Cindy White challenges our understanding of guilt and innocence. While she undeniably caused the deaths of 6 people, her own life story is one of continuous victimization and trauma. From the sexual abuse by her father to the exploitation by the Robertsons, Cindy never experienced a normal, healthy environment. This doesn't excuse her actions, but it provides crucial context for understanding how she arrived at that fatal decision. Failure of the justice system to uncover the full truth during Cindy's trial is also deeply troubling. The nude photos and love letters, rather than being seen as potential evidence of exploitation, were used to paint her as a scorned lover. This oversimplification of a complex situation likely contributed to her harsh sentence. It raises questions about how the legal system handles cases involving long-term abuse and trauma, especially when the victims are young and vulnerable. Cindy's inability to speak about her abuse for many years is not uncommon among survivors. Shame, fear, and a lack of understanding about what they've experienced often keep victims silent. In Cindy's case, this silence had catastrophic consequences, both for the Robertson family and for herself. It underscores the critical importance of creating safe spaces for abuse victims to come forward and be heard. The role of Carol Robertson in this tragedy is particularly disturbing. As a woman and a mother, her participation in the abuse of a teenage girl represents a profound betrayal. It complicates the narrative of Cindy as simply a jilted lover and highlights the complex dynamics that can exist in abusive situations. Cindy's story also raises important questions about rehabilitation and the purpose of incarceration. After 4 decades in prison, is continued confinement serving any constructive purpose? Has Cindy had access to the mental health support and therapy she clearly needs? The U.S. prison system often fails to adequately address the underlying issues that lead to crime, particularly in cases involving abuse and trauma. The tragedy of the Robertson children is heart-wrenching. 4 young lives were cut short due to a chain of abuse and poor decisions. While Cindy bears responsibility for their deaths, it's crucial to recognize that the cycle of abuse that led to this point began long before that fateful night. It's a stark reminder of how the effects of abuse can ripple outward, affecting not just the immediate victim, but potentially many others. Cindy's case highlights the need for better early intervention in cases of child abuse and exploitation. Had someone recognized and effectively intervened in Cindy's abuse as a child, or identified the exploitation happening in the Robertson home, this tragedy might have been prevented. Underscores the importance of education, vigilance, and robust support systems for identifying and addressing abuse. The long-term psychological effects of childhood sexual abuse, as evidenced in Cindy's story, profound. From her conversion disorder as a teenager to her inability to recognize and escape an exploitative situation as a young adult, the impact of her early trauma is clear. It emphasizes the need for long-term specialized support for survivors of childhood abuse. Cindy's case also brings attention to the issue of power dynamics and consent. As a vulnerable teenager with a history of abuse, Cindy was in no position to give meaningful consent to a sexual relationship with an adult in a position of authority over her. The failure to recognize this at the time of her trial reflects a broader societal lack of understanding about these issues. The story raises questions about missed opportunities for intervention. Were there signs that others could have noticed? Did Cindy exhibit behaviors that might have indicated she was being abused? How can society better equip people to recognize and respond to signs of abuse and exploitation? Cindy's expression of remorse and her attempts to take responsibility for her actions, even while explaining the context of her trauma, show a level of growth and self-reflection. It raises the question of whether the justice system allows enough room for this kind of personal development, and whether it adequately considers factors like youth, trauma, and coercion when determining sentences. Ultimately, Cindy's story is a tragic illustration of the cyclical nature of abuse and the far-reaching consequences of failing to protect the vulnerable. It challenges us to think deeply about justice, rehabilitation, and the complex factors that contribute to criminal behavior. To call for more nuanced approaches to both preventing abuse and dealing with its aftermath. recognizing that in many cases, the line between victim and perpetrator is not as clear as we might like to believe. As society continues to grapple with issues of abuse, trauma, and justice, stories like Cindy's serve as crucial case studies. They remind us of the human complexity behind crime statistics and headlines, and challenge us to strive for a more compassionate and effective approach to both preventing and responding to tragedy.